Melanie, you ready? Okay. So I'd appreciate if you guys would turn your phones off or put them on vibrate so that they don't disturb the meeting. And once you've done that, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So roll call. Rick Miera. Here. Bill Woolman. Here. Bill Knight.
Here.
John Alsobrook.
Here.
Stuart Murray.
Here.
Zach Burkett's traveling, so he can't be with us. So has everybody had an opportunity to read the agenda, go over the agenda? It's really extensive. I guess you've noticed that.
Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So I have a motion for and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we'll move on to presentations. We are very fortunate to have Mr. Jason Kasuga here, who's the CEO and Chief Engineer of the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District, along with his Chief Operations Officer, Eric Zamora. Jason is going to give us a report and discussion about some of the issues we're facing here in the village with regard to the irrigation. Jason, you're on.
Councilors, Mayor, appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Again, my name is Jason Kasuga. I am the CEO and Chief Engineer of the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District. Prior to that, I actually had Mr. Zamora's role as a Chief Operations Officer. And prior to that, I was the Engineering Manager at the district. Prior to that, I was at Bureau of Reclamation. So I've been on the Middle Rio Grande Valley for about 12 years now. I've been practicing engineering for about 16. So what I'm going to go through today.
Oh, you may need to just pick up the microphone.
Is that better?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great. So the topic I'm going to cover today is mainly around the Corrales siphon. At our board meeting this coming Monday, we will be doing a more comprehensive hydrology update, which I think is the backdrop of what we're also experiencing in the Corrales siphon. The issues that are probably making, well, definitely making the water delivery and overall irrigation season in Corrales quite a bit more difficult is related to infrastructure, but the backdrop of that is historic drought conditions that have been persistent for at least 3 years. This will be our third year in a row. So I do want to be clear that I'll deal with the infrastructure issue today. There will be another meeting that will be at the MRGCD, our normal monthly meeting that we will be able to update folks. We always do that at the monthly meeting for the MRGCD. So one of the other things that I would like to invite folks to, I know that we have a lot of folks here in the room that are constituents of the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District. Our board of directors holds a meeting the second Monday of every month. We hear all issues related to the district, both on water delivery, maintenance, river flood control associated with our levees, and groundwater drainage. So these topics are regularly talked about, regularly discussed, and me and my staff give regular updates to the board of directors. So with that, I will jump into the Corrales siphon. Next slide, please. So I just want to be clear, whenever I talk about Corrales siphon, it does come up. I think there is a misconception that the only area served by the Corrales siphon is Corrales, not necessarily among the folks in Corrales, but I think in the broader Bernalillo County MRGCD area. So when I'm talking about the Corrales siphon, there is a Corrales service area, if you will, and that includes all of the village of Corrales and a portion of what we call our A13 zone, which is a little bit further south in green, and that is within the city of Albuquerque. We deliver water to about approximately about 1,000 acres, plus or minus is what we have in terms of people who are at least scheduling with the district. I will say scheduling with the district is a requirement, and that should be being done, especially now as we are in these drought times, understanding how and who is taking water and how much is an important thing. So if you're not scheduling, it's a plug to please schedule. It helps us in terms of decision making for sure. Next slide, please. So what is the Corrales siphon? I've gotten this question up and down this valley for numerous weeks now. So just to make sure everybody's aware, the Corrales siphon is not a pumping operation. It's actually a pipeline that runs underneath the Rio Grande, and it moves water from the east side of the Rio Grande to the west side of the Rio Grande. And it is the primary source of water, delivery source of water to the Corrales main canal on the west side that obviously the community of Corrales benefits from. So the unique, why is Corrales siphon unique? The Corrales siphon is actually wood constructed pipe. So if you can imagine a visual, imagine a whiskey barrel, but much larger, like 72 inches, encased in a wood frame and then mud packed, but all the same characteristics of kind of like a wooden barrel, and 1,200 feet long underneath the Rio Grande. I have searched and searched. I can't figure out exactly why they decided to do concrete when this was constructed in the 30s, or sorry, not to do concrete because it was available. My one hypothesis on why they did this is, if you can see the wood stilts, I think they were probably dealing with a high groundwater issue at that point in time, and they needed to be able to construct something within the river channel that they could do while they were fighting groundwater and potentially times of high river. And trying to dewater the river, they didn't really have the technology that we have today and the type of equipment we had today to divert the river and move the kind of water that we can move at times. So that is my hypothesis, but I haven't found anything in the literature to support that. I get the question about why would you ever build a pipe underground out of wood? So I thought I would answer that question. So next slide. So I thought it worthwhile to go through some recent history. Not all this history. I have been at the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District 4. I came to the district in 2016, June of 2016, but I think it's worthwhile for transparency's sake to tell you everything that I know about the siphon and what was known and how we find ourselves where we are. So in 2014, it was decided, and I don't really have the history of why it was decided, but it was decided that a conditions assessment and a video inspection of the Corrales siphon was done. That needed to be done. One thing that was unique about this is this was probably the first time since the siphon was constructed that all the water was ever pumped out of it. I can't find of any other records where the siphon was drained completely out and there was a push to try to understand the state of the siphon, which in modern days today is a pretty routine thing. We want to inspect pipes, we want to understand them. If I'm considering potential reasons why we find ourselves where we are, one thing that I would have to look back, part of my career was in closed conduit pipes, is the material of this pipe was wood. It's underground for a long time and was not really exposed to air for a very long time. And then it was when it was drained. So I don't understand exactly the conditions for why it was determined to do that. But I will say is a common practice to try to inspect your infrastructure. And so I don't think that would have been out of practice for any entity to try to understand infrastructure. So what came out of that assessment report was a recommendation to remove sediment at a west side siphon outlet. For the most part, when that was dewatered, they were able to do a lot of that. They noticed that a wood stave, a portion of the whiskey barrel, if you will, was missing between station 130 and 148. That's important when we start talking about this larger break in the siphon. And then there was a recommendation to repair a leak in the concrete joint at station 120. Overall, when you look at that assessment report, though, the engineering company that did the assessment came out saying in their report that they believed that the Corrales siphon was largely doing its job and in pretty good shape. I think the word may be pretty good, pretty decent. I mean, look at the actual language in the report. But there wasn't, at the time, in terms of the structural ability of the pipe that they could look at and see, there was not this fear that the pipe was in danger from a structural standpoint. One of the things that they did pull out, and I'm going to get into here in a minute, is the state of what happened to the river and the fact that the siphon had become exposed to the river. So I'll stop there and then I'll pick that up here in a minute. So in 2016, a technical memo was completed the month I arrived at the district. That memo had all the same recommendations from 2014 because they just included this conditions assessment report in there. And also what was included in there at the time was a alternative analysis, or a very small version of an alternative analysis. What came out of that recommendation at that time was that if there was ever going to be a long-term solution, that would mean boring another pipe of similar size underneath the river, and the cost would have been just under $6 million at that point in time. But, and again, I can't, I'm inferring a little bit here because of why maybe an alternative wasn't pursued. My guess is because the overall assessment report had said the siphon was pretty good, and I think that led to the direction that the district went on. So in 2017, an east side hole, so this was a hole over the siphon, appeared over the Sandia area in 2017, right above where we saw the stave, right in the stave location. But the hole wasn't a hole like I'm going to show pictures of what we found in 2021. It was a depression. It was like if you saw pavement give way and there was a depression, right? And so at that point in time, there was a decision made by the board of directors to move forward with trying to repair the wood stave section at that point in time. The reason why I think that the wood stave wasn't tried to be repaired soon was this idea of draining this wood pipe again, right? I think there was always a little anxiety from the district as a whole about going to this pipe that was built in the late 1930s and then just draining it again. And the reason why we would have that concern is you have all these forces of water in the river pushing in on that pipe. That pipe is full of water. The only thing pushing out on that pipe is the water in it. And so when you take out that, and then you include, once you take that water out, air can travel from the inlet all the way through the outlet, introducing something that hadn't been in that pipe probably since the 1930s, air. But because that depression formed, it was deemed it was worth it to try to drain the siphon again and get to this wood stave pipe repair. So I led the engineering team internally. We had a subconsultant come in who was a pipe expert. And at that point in time, we brought in 2 8-inch pumps, the same type of pumping operation that drained the siphon the first time. And we pumped for about a week straight and dropped the water surface elevation in the siphon 4 inches. So something changed between 2014 and 2018. In 2014, they were able to bring those types of pumps in, drain the siphon all the way down. By 2018, we want to try to go do the wood pipe repair. Now you can't drain the siphon. Again, I'm hypothesizing because I've never been able to inspect the siphon since the video I have seen in 2014 in the still photos. Now enters this period where we start seeing more and more and more of this siphon exposed to the river, right? So we then install a project for in 2020 to install a rock weir to put the siphon back underwater. And then obviously in 2021, the east side hole discovered. So I'm taking the time to go all the way through the history, and then I'm going to jump back to specific pieces, show photos, show maps and what, but I thought I would go through everything that I have to date of what brings me here today. Okay. Next slide, please. So exposure of the siphon to the river. I start here because I will tell you, myself and others at the district, including the board, felt like some of the greatest exposure to cutting off water to Corrales would have been the river, the force of the river continuing to push on the siphon and just breaking it in two in the river. And you'll see why that's possible and how that's possible when I show photos, right? So this is where we focused our attention starting in 2019 and 2020. Next photo. So one thing I put this photo back up here to show is now top of the siphon's blue line. So blue line on the map, blue line on the siphon. Just to be clear, I flipped this map. North is now down just so I could align East Bank, West Bank with the historical construction profile. Again, this is a profile hand sketched in the 1930s. What you'll notice is the top of the riverbed, right? And then as you move to the west, the orange line actually depicts how the river had changed, cutting down approximately 12.5 to 14 feet and exposing the top of the siphon. I'll show pictures of that here in a moment. And that exposed the top of the siphon, brought the bottom top down to maybe not quite halfway to the full flowing of the river. And that also exposed it to rafters and kayakers and all those kinds of folks. So this thing's just getting ramped over and the water's just hitting this pipe continuously. So I think hopefully folks can get a mental picture of that as folks are coming down. And I think the photos will help here next. Next slide. So what that looks like. Right side picture, 2020 photo, and this was not actually the worst of it. You'll see the worst of it when I show the construction photo, but the whole top section of that siphon is exposed now. And one of the things that we were concerned about is as we were facing these successive drought years, that in the river going down, more and more of this siphon would then be exposed. We would continue to see this undercutting of the river underneath the siphon. We would start to see this mud compact section within the box of the siphon start getting eroded out. And then there was also the public risk. This could act as a strainer, is a term on the river for somebody who gets caught in there underneath it and stuck and they can't get out and they're drowning, right? So there's a public safety risk, there's a water delivery risk. And so this moved the district to start working with the federal government, getting compliance, doing all the things that we need to do to build what we call a rock weir out through the river. You can see a portion of that construction start on the picture to the left. And so the purpose of this structure was to put it all the way across the river and dial it back into the bank on the east side. And that rock weir would be raised up high enough that would result in water now always the siphon being underwater again and cause sediment to drop out and put the siphon back underwater in sediment like it was before. And hopefully eliminating both the public safety danger and then the danger of the pipe breaking based on the force of the river hitting the pipe. Next slide, please. So this was the design done. This is, again, was done within the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District. Prior to coming to the district, I was a river maintenance engineer at Reclamation. Spent quite a bit of time doing river maintenance projects and restoration projects on this river. So we took the lead on designing this. I went to the Corps of Engineers, got our permit, went to Fish and Wildlife Service, got our permit, and MRGCD crews actually constructed this just because of the cost to try to bring in a contractor to do work like this. There's not many people that work over the river well. It's mainly very few actually in New Mexico. You have to kind of go to Louisiana and other places to find them. So this was done starting in the fall of 2020 ahead of the 2021 irrigation season. And I think it was a good thing to do because we had a not very good 2021 in terms of water standpoint. It got really low and we would have had more of the siphon. You can again see it here in October, the siphon, much more of the siphons exposed. You can see the side slats on there where you have the vertical beams that would be going down or pillars that would be going down into the earth that the wood box that you saw in that first picture would have been connected to. So this was complete in 2020 ahead of the 2021 irrigation season. Next slide, please. So this is a 2020 imagery. This is 2021 with the whole project complete. We're still doing work on the bank there, but largely successful. Everything that you can see is the rock. There is a distance between the rock. You can't see it in the photo of the imagery, but the distance where the edge of the rock ends and the siphon is 25 feet because the size of rock that we were using, we didn't want any of that rock to roll in and hit the siphon. The nominal diameter of that rock started at 48 inches. We needed a really big excavator, pick up rock, and we literally set the rock in almost one piece of rock at a time. And on the right side, I apologize, the red dot is pretty small, but there's a red dot on the right side of this photo. So on the east side of this riverbank, that is how far the rock is anchored in. Now, based on the type of compliance that we got, if the district ever had to go back, dig up and keep extending this rock across, we could do this. But for the most part, I don't anticipate from a river alignment standpoint that the river is going to change much from where it is. It's pretty incised, and it would take probably grade control structures built by the federal government to allow the river to meander like it used to. So for right now, I think the river is relatively locked in, but we do have the option to continue to extend that across. Next slide. So that brings me to the second time this east side siphon hole appears. Next slide, please. Next slide. So same graph I put up there, just because it brings everybody back to a reference point. Red star, orange star sits over the general location of where this hole is. Again, this is on the east side of the river within the lands of the Pueblo of Sandia. Next slide. So the sinkhole, or we call it a sinkhole, but it's not really a sinkhole. I was challenged by that by somebody else. And so I will acknowledge it's not a sinkhole, it's a hole. In late 2021, early 2022, we started exploring the hole because what was different is it wasn't a depression anymore. It was a full hole all the way down to where you could see water. The first time the depression formed, all it was the land dropped. There was actually, you could not see down to water. In this instance, you could see all the way down the hole to water. We tried a dewatering operation similar before, which I didn't have much hope of at that point in time would do anything because we had tried it once already, but just to really make sure, we did try to dewater. We tried it two ways actually, and I'll show photos of this. We brought in pumps and tried to dewater, and then we actually cut a channel. If you guys are, probably not many folks in this room have had access to this side of the river on the Pueblo, but if you can imagine, we're up higher where this hole is, the drain is actually very low. So we have the gradient to be able to cut a channel from the high water elevation that's presenting itself in the hole, and get positive drainage to the drain and try to just drain the hole. See if we could drain everything out of the siphon, or at least drain enough space in the siphon down to see what's going on. And then one of the other things that we have is now we put this permanent fencing up right now, because right now that hole is still there. It's still open. There's no use in just putting anything down into it because I'll just fill up the siphon with dirt at this point in time. So we have some permanent fencing and signage up around there. So nobody from the Pueblo of Isleta, or sorry, the Sandia Pueblo, can go in there either driving at night or walking without hitting barricades. Next slide. So the water surface, what's important about this is, from my experience, water surface elevation is really important. If folks don't know, typically when you're operating a siphon and you have water running through a siphon, that siphon is actually pressurized, kind of like a water pipe is that you get water from your house. It actually is under pressure, right? So water could come, if it was fully pressurized, you would see water shooting out of that straight up in the air to the degree that it's pressurized. In this instance, it's not pressurized because the irrigation system is not on. So the one key question is, is that water surface elevation the same water surface elevation as the river? And I was praying it wasn't, because if that is in my head, if that water surface elevation in that hole is the same as the water surface elevation in the river, then the connection is the river is now feeding the siphon. The siphon is no longer watertight. Now the river is somehow feeding the siphon. Next, and then on the so on the photo on the right that we just moved from showed us digging this trench. So this is, I wish I could share this video, but it always breaks. And this was such a big presentation, I had to make it into a PDF, but we videoed this. This ran continuously for hours. The siphon ran about 25 CFS from what we could measure for hours, never stopped. That bubbling never went down. And as soon as we plugged this again, the water surface elevation rose to the same water surface elevation as in the river. So I think that confirmed our hypothesis that the river is now feeding the siphon, which makes fixing it so much more difficult, very much more difficult. At the same time, we also received advice from an engineering company that if we tried to operate the siphon in these conditions, that we could damage the siphon and take repair options off the table. Either slip lining something with a different pipe, putting in some sort of barrier, all those could go away if we had a catastrophic break, or significantly increase the cost if we had to open up larger trenches, try to dewater. In this sense, where we are related to the river and the aquifer, they're so connected, you have to pump a lot to dewater in this area. Lots and lots and lots more. You would be pumping more flow rate than I can deliver with the pumps that I have out there moving water into Corrales as a general comparison. Next slide. So that brings us to a 2022 pumping operation. At this point in time, as you can imagine at the district, there's a lot going on. We have a community that has a broken siphon. How do we get water to this community? I will say about this point in time, it's probably late January because of where we found this. Very quickly, we put together an RFP. We put this RFP out and we were able to get a contractor to respond to us. The contractor's price for this operation was $913,000 to bring water into Corrales. But we had to do it, right? We just can't say no water. We've got to do everything we can to try to bring water while water is available. So this is unanimously approved by the board, and we start going into operations. This system was being installed at in March, ahead of our deadline to be able to turn on these pumps in early April to start moving water through. When these pumps were being installed, we were actually charging the southernmost portion of the MRGCD in Socorro. So this is how close to irrigation season it was. I will say, I've been in the federal government and now I'm on this local government side, and there was a lot of consternation on whether or not somebody could get a governmental RFP on the street and get an operation like this on the ground before the start of irrigation season. So I'm relatively happy that this happened. If it would not have happened, I know that we have faced a lot of water challenges in Corrales, but if this wouldn't have happened, there would have been no water challenges that we're going to talk about today. There would have been no water, period. So next slide. So I'm going to pause there for a second. Go back to the next slide. Go back to the previous slide, please. So I think it is worth talking about. This operation is not electrical. This operation is diesel. And cat's out of the bag because it was in the Albuquerque Journal, but at any given time, I have 800 gallons of diesel behind that fence, folks. A stone's throw away from your bosque. So just keep that in mind. We put stuff in place to try to keep vehicles from getting out. But unfortunately, there are folks out there that don't do wise things, and quite frankly, that just like to do harmful things. And we have thought hard and been very worried about somebody coming out there in the middle of the night. I really do appreciate Corrales, the law enforcement, fire marshal or fire chief Anthony for taking time to go out there at night. He was out there prom night from what I understand, and turned back to a caravan who was going to be out there at prom night. And so I do want folks to know that it was not us thinking through and doing this operation the time that we had to do it. We put as much thought and effort into what we could do and then what we could get on the ground given the time frame that we had. And I know it's not perfect. I trust me, I know it's not perfect. And I'm not going to sit here today and say that it is, and I'm not going to sit here today and say that Corrales is not suffering. I think every time I've been challenged about that, whether it is by a person from Corrales or by the media, I have acknowledged that Corrales faces an extraordinarily difficult year on top of a very difficult year already because of hydrology that we're seeing. Before I go into 2023, I do think it is worthwhile to give a hydrology update. At this point in time, I was going to invite you guys to the board meeting, but I think it does make a lot of sense to do it at this point in time right here. So if you look at the greater part of the Southwest, I'm sorry, counselors, I'm kind of trying to see everybody here. So I apologize for having my back to you. where if you look at the southwest portion of New Mexico or of the southwest or of the United States, just draw a line through the center of the United States, draw a line about right around the Mississippi, and you look to the bottom left quadrant of that map, southwest, right? We are in the third year in a row, if you look at a map from Drought Watch, of either deep red or deeper red. So that is considered excessive drought or severe drought. We are finding ourselves in the same place for the third year in a row. Early on in the season, people, I think, were excited, and I was to a point of seeing our basins accumulate 92% of average at certain times, 96% of average. But what folks don't realize is this past year, from 2021 to 2022, something changed in those graphs. Those graphs were a 30-year record. And so this was the year it was time to roll that record forward. So when we rolled that record forward, the 80s stripped out of that record. So if folks are familiar with the hydrology in the 80s, it was one of the wettest period of records on time, right? And so now that is no longer in the calculation for average. So in some of those basins, average dropped between 18 to 20%. So we're celebrating 92%, but that is in some senses 18 to 20% less. And then as we progressed through the winter and got into irrigation season, that hydrology has cratered. One thing very different between this year and last year was wind. I think all of us know that. We can see the damage of wind with fires in our higher elevations, fires along the Bosque and Valencia County, fire here relatively locally. Wind, I don't think we've had a week where we've not had at least one day, but probably multiple days of gusts up to 25 miles an hour, right? With that did not happen in 2021, right? The hydrology was very similar to 2021 in that, but we didn't lose a lot of moisture to wind, and we didn't have sustained periods of high wind. High wind does two things. One, causes havoc if there's a fire, but two, in the higher elevations, it actually evaporates snow called sublimation, right? We lose, snow turns to vapor, and it reduces what we call the snow water equivalent of water, right? We're always looking at these graphs from the federal government, and every time snow falls, they're estimating how much water are we going to get out of this basin, and wind just saps that. Wind also is hard on our basin from a soil moisture standpoint, right? You have these successive dry years and you have wind. One of the things that we also have is a historically dry soil content up in our basins and moving down. So the reason why I say all that, and I think why that backdrop is important, is where we find ourselves now is we are native water of the Rio Grande. So when I say native water, that's water produced within the Rio Grande River Basin, right? Native water within the Rio Grande is vastly running out. It's going down. The Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District last week started release of San Juan Chama water. Just very short, San Juan Chama water is extra water that comes trans-basin from the San Juan River Basin of Colorado. It's a supply of water that we have, but it's a very small supply compared to what we get from the Rio Grande Basin. And right now it is supplementing the river for us to continue to make deliveries, not only to Corrales, but to all farmers along the river. I expect that we got good news. We thought we were only going to have 4,000 acre feet. And now I think we have 56,000 or 54,000 acre feet, and we're going to have 5,600 acre feet. So 5,600 acre feet for our June allocation, and which will last us about 2 more days by comparison. That's how much water agriculture takes and the river takes. So we effectively will probably be out of water somewhere between the 17th and the 20th. And that just depends on how long the main stem holds up, because as the main stem of the river goes down, we release more San Juan Chama water to prop up the river to make deliveries to farmers. That was a long explanation, and so I appreciate your patience, but now I'll get to the point why that's important. That water we're releasing is sustaining the water surface elevation in the river that is allowing me to pump water out of it and deliver it to Corrales. We're vastly approaching a time where the water surface elevation is going to drop to the degree that the intakes of the pumps may not be in water anymore. And at that point in time, the pumps can't pump water that they don't have access to. And the sad reality about that, and the unfortunate reality about that, is the district MRGC will be continuing to deliver water to other farmers whose infrastructure is not broke, while the village of Corrales does not have access to water because the pumping operation won't be going on. And it's not because we're choosing to do that, it's because we have physically run out of the water needed to keep the water surface elevation in the river and moving to Corrales. I take a breath there real quick because that was a lot, right?
You need some
So
water?
the 2023. Before I go to, you can go to, go past 23 and go to the next slide. I think it's good to talk about this first. Because I get this question a lot, and then I'll talk about what we face next year. Is MRGCD pursuing a solution to the Corrales siphon? 100%. MRGCD is pursuing a solution to the Corrales siphon. There was an alternative analysis done in 2016, like I said. The one issue that with that alternative analysis, I think, is it did not contemplate the siphon, the work that we did to shore up the siphon. Sir, I don't think that they're taking questions at the time. They asked me to move all the way through my presentation, and to my understanding, questions will be
This is
directed
for
to the board.
information only, no questions, no debate. We have a number of elected officials here who will get an opportunity to speak. But this is just primarily for information of the village council and for you who live here.
Just so you know, I will leave, my card will be here. It'll take me a little bit, but I have every call, anybody from that's called me and asked me questions on this. I had several Corrales residents call me the other day. I will answer your questions. I will call you back, and then I'll also invite you to the board if you want to hear information. The MRGC is not hiding from this. We've been very outspoken about this from the beginning. I'm not hiding anything from you guys. If I can't answer your question or your question doesn't come up from the council, my card will be here. I'm happy to address any question that you guys have. Okay. So Wilson and Company is often running on alternatives now on a alternative analysis that will supplement what was done in 2016, and I expect that to be largely done in draft form in July and presented to the board hopefully in August. They are looking at alternatives to repair the siphon. They're looking at alternatives to how we get water if the siphon, if it's not the right option to repair the siphon, or do I put a new siphon in, right? And we're going one step further, and we're going to analyze what we call the no action alternative, just because I have to do it if I'm going to find federal dollars. And so that one's in there, but please know, we're not considering the no action alternative. I just have to do it. If I get federal dollars, it's required for NEPA. That report will be available to the public. All of our information is public information. So I do expect this solution to be expensive, more than MRGCD has in reserve. That is we manage a system that's 1,200 miles long, most of it earthen, with lots of different structures, and the amount of dollars at any given time from an emergency standpoint for a project like this, the district has always had to reach out for federal grants, state grants to do things like this, right? So I expect that to be the case here. I don't want to speculate on how much money, because I don't know yet. I've been asked, hey, you're an engineer, you got to have an idea about how much it's going to cost. And I'm biting my tongue because I don't want to speculate. One thing that has changed is everybody understands what's happened related to supply and demand right now. And whatever I give you, I am not barometered for what we're facing from supply and demand. So I will wait till our engineering consultant gives us that information, and then that will be presented to the public. And then a path will be chosen forward. I will say that the district is positioning itself to look for all options for funding, whether that be Water Trust Board, whether that be capital outlay process, whether that be federal grants. So I want to make sure I address whether or not MRGCD is working on a long-term problem before I go to 23. Go up one slide. So unfortunately, there will be a pumping operation in 2023. The type of capital infrastructure that we're talking about is not something I believe is capable of getting funding in the timeframe to begin construction before the start of 2023. If that happens, and it's not that we're not looking, but if for some way we can find funding to accelerate that process, we'll accelerate that process. One of the things that will be different is we are currently working on, and we'll have 3-phase power delivered to this site. So whatever pumping operations going on next year will be done by electricity, which offers us quite a bit different operational flexibility than having big diesel pumps with 800 gallons of diesel sitting on site, a stone's throw from the Bosque. Will allow for a more continuous operation. I will say big pumps like these, especially diesel, they require attention, they require oil, they require maintenance after 400 hours, and they drink a lot of diesel gas. And so we have to have an operation to keep filling them up, right? And then they break down just like any engine. Right now, we're limited at times because we have one engine out that is, its radiator is busted. And so we are still using it, but we have to watch it closely. And again, the supply chain issue, how fast can we get a radiator for a pretty custom sized pump, either manufactured or found off the shelf, and get it here in a time to get it operational? So the logistics of what we're doing, it's not for trying. And I really want to emphasize that. I think there's a lot of folks out there who believe that we are not trying. I would be happy if you guys want ride-alongs with my folks. If you want to come in and see what we're doing, we are trying. And this operation has taken its toll on staff. And I know people sign up to do a job, but many of them don't sign up to do a job for 18, 19, 20 hours at a time to keep pumps running, right? And but they're doing it. They recognize that, and they're doing the best that they can. Yeah, so my expectation is sort of finding some sort of funding source that accelerates this construction process, because it won't be a design issue. I expect the design will track way ahead, right? I've got to have the design done and enough to be able to inform folks, whether it's Water Trust Board, state capital outlay process, anything like that, on what it's going to cost as I go ask for this. So it won't be the design that slows us down. It'll be finding the dollars for construction. And so one of the things I think I really want to be honest with folks is that we recognize, and I am not going to challenge anybody in this room, that Corrales is facing a difficult situation. Not going to do it. I understand that. Corrales is facing a difficult situation next year. I will add on top of that, the whole valley is, though. If the district runs out of water in San Juan Chama water by by June 19th, large sections of water delivery across the whole valley, with the exception of PMP demand to the pueblos, will be gone. And that's not because the district is holding back any water. We will have spent every drop we have access to try to deliver the irrigation season the longest possible. But I will be clear about this. In the last board meeting, I said this, and then I had a constituent call up and ask why the district is essentially turning off the faucet. I want to be clear. I'm not turning off the faucet. We're just going to run out of water in the river. If we don't get rain, you guys will actually be able to walk across the river for the first time since 1983 through Albuquerque and not get your feet wet. There's still some options out there that we're working on that may provide a supplemental amount of water to slow drying, but that's not a guarantee, and it costs dollars, costs money. You have to buy that water. You have to lease it. Nobody's giving away water for free. So with that, councilors, mayor, again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. This is a large topic that has lots of questions. I imagine I'm going to get questions from the councilors. I will answer all those questions tonight. If anybody has any follow-up questions, my cards will be here. I will also be at the board meeting of MRGCD on Monday, where we have public comment. I will be giving an update from this. My card will be available for folks to give me a call. I'm not going to not try to answer any questions. Okay. So with that, councilors, I will yield the floor to any questions you guys have.
Council, do you want to ask questions first, or do you want to let our state legislators speak?
Let the legislators.
Sure. So Brenda, did you make it here? Brenda McKenna? Oh, here you go. You want to come up here and make a few comments?
If I leave this on, can you make out what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor, and hello, council members. And thank you, Jason, for that very well done presentation. Like many of you, I read in the Albuquerque Journal on June 5th, the report of our urgent irrigation needs here in Corrales. Earlier in this spring, Jason did tell us about the ongoing PNM project called three-phase power. And I want to express my gratitude for PNM for advancing the project. And so far, 2 deliveries of water have been secured. Given the presentation that Jason just gave us, it's past urgent that a remedy is found. And I'm going to work with my legislators, Representative Eli and Representative Robert Powell here, to do what we can to explore state funds to help fix this for good. And I'm going to be writing a letter to PNM mayor and to council members and expressing and sincerely volunteering to meet with all that is required so that we can bring relief to our farmers and to our farms and of course to our flora and fauna. So thank you, Mayor, for having this session today.
Thank you. Thank you, Brenda. Jane, would you like to make a comment? Should probably call you representative, but gosh, I've known you so long. I just call you Jane.
Thank you. I'm Representative Jane Padrell Colbert and represented District 44. I've been in the House now for 19 years, but of Corrales, all I've ever had was 1 precinct. But after being elected the first time, I represent Town of Bernalillo, Rio Rancho, and Corrales. And throughout my history as a legislator, I've always looked at every area that I represent getting 1/3 of whatever dollars we receive for capital and junior money. So I've always supported the needs of Corrales and worked with Representative Eli and I and McKenna and Sapien. We've always worked together to try to get projects finished, identified and finished for the village. And so that's been historical. I heard about this whole issue on April the 30th of this year. And I do totally believe had it been brought to our attention because of the relationship that the 4 or 5 of us have, that perhaps we could have come up with some dollars one way or the other to address this issue. I've always worked on flooding since 2006. You know, the majority of my district was flooded. And so I can tell you anything you want to know about flooding and the flow of sand and the channel and what needed to be done at the river. This is my first shot at trying to address irrigation. Be that as it may, I have spoken to probably 9 or 10 people since finding out about it in April and have set up meetings and did go and meet with Jason in regards to what the possibilities of dollars are and where they might be available. And so I have several meetings set up over the next couple of weeks to see if there's some dollars that we can utilize that have not been used to try to expedite what needs to be done. Now I'm shooting, and I've said this to Jason, for anywhere from $3 to $5 million. And I'm just guessing, I'm not sure, but I do believe that that would be a start. And so that's what I'm doing. And now after redistricting, I have all of Corrales, which I should have had all of Corrales anyway, I believe, but we will work to find some dollars. We've worked well together over the years, and Representative Eli, his term isn't up until and even though he's announced, his term isn't up until the end of the year. And so we will be working together to try and bring home some dollars that will help expedite this. And Jason has not given us a precise amount, but based on conversations I've had with other individuals, I'm pretty good at finding some loose money. And so hopefully we can come up with some dollars sooner rather than later. If not, the alternative that we have as legislators is to put in legislation for emergency funding. And that's and Councilor Miera knows how we have to work that. But we will push to do that as well. And so I'm open to any questions. You know, like I said, I'm pretty good at finding some dollars to get some things done. And this area has always had a group of folks. You know, I'm Republican on the other side of the aisle, but we've never allowed that to impact how we take care of this area. We work together as a team, and I believe we will continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Padrino. Representative Eli, would you like to say something? You gonna write us a check? Is that what you're gonna say?
Yeah, right. Well, I do think Jane is right. I think we can figure out money. What I'm interested in, I'm not gonna give a speech. I'm more interested in questions. We got people that are gonna lose trees, 60-year investments. I want to know what can be done now, not in 2023. If I can get some direction as a state legislator to say, gosh, we need this amount of money to get a distribution now before the water runs out, help me, give me something specific. We'll get you to New Mexico Finance Authority or to the Water Trust Board or whoever. And then, of course, the second question is, if there, and this is a poor substitute, but if there's nothing else that can be done, can we do a program that would compensate farmers for what's happened as a result of the broken siphon? Those are really, I'm asking you as a rep, not so much of what's happened in the past or what's going to happen in the future, but what can I do right now? If I had a specific plan, we will work in a bipartisan way to get you funding. And Mel, thank you for inviting me, by the way. I appreciate it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Councilors, anybody? Councilor Wallman?
Jason, first of all, thank you for the very comprehensive report you gave. And this may be a very naive question from a layman, but this was built in 1933 and it's wooden.
Yes, sir.
You had several studies. You started in 2014. You came on board in 2016. There was a technical report and several since then. You're spending $913,000 for a contract this year to Wilson and Company to study this and perhaps come up with some kind of a remedy to fix the wooden siphon.
So, Counselor, the $913,000 is specifically the pumping operation only.
Just for the pumping.
Yeah, the technical work is quite a bit less.
All right. Can you answer me this question? If in 2016, you found that this wooden 1933 siphon was not adequate, and there were Band-Aid repairs over the years, was there ever any consideration ever given to replacing that with a steel or a concrete or some kind of a different kind of siphon that to service the village?
So, Counselor, I would say there are probably discussions on that. I was not liberty to those. I wasn't in the type of position that I'm in now.
No discussions in the last 6
Yeah.
years.
But, and let me finish, but
Okay, yeah.
what I will say is from the report that, again, the report that came in largely said that the siphon structurally was doing pretty well. And if that it has wood, any substance, especially wood, right? If it's left underground, doesn't receive oxygen, it's not breaking down, right? It's not, it is staying relatively whole. And that was the general assessment. The primary recommendations that were made were the three that I put up there. And there was this recommendation for the wood stave, for the wood repair. One of the things that changed though, and I think there was concern for this, was that they drained this wood pipe that had never been drained since, to my knowledge, at least that I can find records, since 1933. There was a lot of angst about doing that, from what I can understand looking at the documents when they did that, because nobody knew how this siphon was going to react. And by the time that the 2016 study was done and we got into 2017, that's when we saw the depression. formed over that area, and the board authorized at that point in time to try to initiate pumping again. But again, to my knowledge, we weren't able to pump that down to make that repair.
So no discussion basically about replacing it with some
Yeah.
kind of a substance that is would meet 2022 standards.
That I was a part of, no, sir.
Okay. If I could, one other question. You're going to continue pumping. I was there today and took a look at that. You say one of the two pumps is not working to full efficiency.
That is correct.
Okay, when will the electrical hookup be completed?
That will be complete before the end of this calendar year and available to us in 23.
And have you looked into?
Counselor, but I will say the
Yeah.
water will run out long before.
Right, I know you
that
can't
issue.
control the rain, but you could control what's happening with the siphon. And have you looked at the federal infrastructure funds that are available that come to the state?
Counselor, we are exploring every funding option.
And what have you been told on that?
There is federal funding available, but again, I have extensive history with federal funding that comes with a NEPA requirement. And I think it's, while seeking federal funding is not out, I think the first place I would rather go is state funding that allows me a lot of different options that federal dollars don't. And federal dollars actually slow projects down. The
Well,
money's
this is
good.
not, I'm
but-
not talking about the traditional Bureau of Reclamation, those kinds. I'm talking about the federal money that came from the COVID funds, the CARES Act.
So none of that, actually, we don't qualify. We're not a pressurized pipe system. So MRGCD put in dollars for ARPA, I think is what you're talking about. We are not a potable water utility. So a lot of that funding was not available to us.
Councilor Muir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, councilors. I have a couple of questions and start off with availability and then go to use. So under the availability part, appreciate the representative senators coming up and speaking about their end. And, we did make reference to Representative Eli still being on. And I bring his name up specifically only because of the fact that he's going to stay with us. But if you're going to get money in January, it doesn't happen in January. I think not, you will know that, but maybe other members don't understand that. That happens, it starts in August. And you start making those deals about how much money you're going to be able to get. And we all get the same amount of money. And I'm not talking about that. I'm not just talking about, no, legislator A gets some monies. We need new, different monies. And from that perspective, I think, the governor gets a third, Senate gets a third, House gets a third of these monies. This year, like just past year, we're flush with money. It's a word I wasn't used to hearing when I was in, but flush is flush. And they have a lot of money. And so, but you know what, unless they have something they can bring to the table, regardless of which representative it is, but specifically for Eli, he's gonna have to say, we need this amount of money. And you can't say, well, we don't know just yet. You know what? Give them some sort of a dollar figure, because if not, they're just out there floating and say, I need this amount of money. And that being said, I think it's really important that you get down. And for that, I'm going to change it over to the next question, Mr. Mayor. And that is, you have the diesel now and you're getting the electricity coming in next year. Then you're going to have to change over to electric pumps. So what's that going to cost? We go from a diesel pump to an electric pump.
So the cost of the pumps are actually equal from a monthly standpoint. It's just, do you have the energy to use it? So whether or not, because right now I think the average monthly price pump, the average monthly price that just not to operate them, but just to have them on the ground is about $52,000 ish. And that $52,000 to have the pumps on the ground is pretty much what it is, regardless of whether it's diesel or electric.
So you're renting them?
Absolutely, sir.
And you have no intention of buying them, so we can have this thing going on in years in the future?
At this point in time, we have not contemplated buying pumps of this size for this project yet.
Well, assuming that we're going to be here for the next 10, 15 years, I'd sure like to be able to be thinking when I don't want to be renting, when I can be buying.
So, Counselor, the alternative analysis is contemplating a permanent pumping operation. A permanent pumping operation wouldn't be what you see out there today. All that would be underground. The MRGC has built a similar pump station in Socorro with federal dollars, but that took about 4 years. And so yeah, so that is being contemplated. That's why we're not spending money on pumps now. We want to see what comes out of the alternative analysis from a cost standpoint.
Okay, so with that, I thank you for that, because that's kind of where I wanted to go, is that Lisa, once, as Counselor here was asking you, give us some sort of futuristic kind of situations, because maybe in 4 years, we're going to have to be changing over to a bigger system. But we need to be able to ask for that money now. We may not be flush in the next couple of years, but we are flush now. And so that means we're not just asking the legislators, we're going to have to ask the governor, which really talks about some statewide projects. And, you heard them, some projects make it to the top, they get an awful lot of attention, and so be it. But this has to be one of those situations. And that's where I'm going to come to my final question, Mr. Mayor. We're using our water over here, and I've seen it, and you've seen it. We're putting water in fields for alfalfa, and et cetera, all the way down the line. Then when you started, and thank you for that picture, you started out what the siphon does, who it flows, and who it flows to. You talked about the water coming from up north, and we're getting it from the underground system that we're pulling water from the other side of the mountains up near Durango. So that being the case, should we have control over how people utilize their waters? In other words, we could start within our own parts back here, maybe no more grass, but we need to be doing that. But let's talk maybe a little bit about what happens once it leaves us, Los Ranchos, Albuquerque, Socorro, that kind of situation. How are they using their water? And do we, or should we have, and do you all have feelings about how we need to start conserving our waters in a different form and fashion? Because if we're just doing whatever we can here, but then they're taking it down there and they're utilizing it down there, it makes it a little bit hard on the heart when you drive down and you start seeing water being for lush lawns and things of that nature. Any ideas on that? Or do you feel you could, or we should have a control on that?
Wow, Counselor, that is a loaded question. So I will, I'm going to answer that as best as I can. MRGCD historically, right, we have not had or imposed any type of authority on beneficial use. That's not our role. That's the role of the state. Sits at the office of the state engineer's office, right? That is who defines beneficial use. And we would have to start up there first. Probably something in legislature that would make some sort of definition related to beneficial use. But with that, I caution, because you run a slippery slope. Who decides what's beneficial? Is chili more beneficial than alfalfa? Is a row crop that feeds people more beneficial than a crop that feeds pasture animals, right? So that is an extremely difficult topic, and the MRGCD has never tackled that. We don't define beneficial use. Beneficial use is defined by the state from the state engineer's office. So I will say the drought is causing folks to consider many things, and what I would ask is a measured approach to how we do that, because there are unintended consequences. And I think there is a general fear out there, right? If we go down this route and we're going to start redefining beneficial use, I think a lot of people are going to have questions: who holds ultimately that beneficial use stick? And are we going to value consumable crops more than historically grown alfalfa in the valley? Right. And so I will leave it at that. But the MRGCD to date, and we have actually I don't think we have it on our radar to enforce a definition of beneficial use. What we will do, and what we're starting to do, is enforce whether or not what you put your water on is ready to have water. Like a field with nothing planted, full of weeds and a bunch of trash and debris, that is considered a waste of water because there's nothing cultivated at all. And by the definition of of beneficial use, right? Like that's something that we can enforce. And then also cracking down on 1 acre per hour or better, right? Like there's a lot of growth through this valley to move us to putting water. And gone are the days, and I know it's really hard, but gone are the days of opening your turnout and cracking it and sleeping through the night, right? When we're in drought, that turnout is supposed to be fully open, delivering the max amount of water on your property as fast as it can, and then shutting it down so that we can move the water on the other. So there's a lot of growth in use along the district, and then also growth in our facility. MRGCD has to change as well. And we are doing that. We are seeking funding. Unfortunately, before the siphon, this hole had appeared, we were already in for a large water trust board project for lining a main canal so that we can move water north and south along our arteries. But we are changing too. And yeah, so I would like to point that out.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And on that point, just want to follow up is that, thank you for saying that. But if we don't start thinking about those sorts of situations, we can't assume that in about 4 more years, the water is going to come flowing, because it ain't. And so therefore, we're going to have to start doing something now different. And it changes along the way. Like you said, we'll define beneficiary, but if we don't start talking about it, we're going to have abusers all up and down the system until we tell them to stop. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So John first and Mill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Kasuga, for coming out and helping us with this educational session. The biggest problem here is that the calendar is our enemy and it's fighting against us. And the plans you've shown us for the long-term repair of this 85-year-old wooden pipe is good. It's ambitious. The temporary use for, bringing 3-phase power into run pumps, that's a good plan. Of course, it has risks. A lot, power lines arc, transformers blow up. It's in a sensitive area. The temporary fix right now for the diesel pumps, that's a risk, having that much fuel on site, as you've mentioned, and takes extra attention and power, manpower, people power to monitor it, make sure it's safe. Those are all risks. The biggest risk we have is losing trees and orchards that are older than any of us in this room and everything that goes with it. So this is not, I don't want to patronize you, but I want to remind everyone in the room about the MRGCD mission statement. Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District operates, maintains, and manages irrigation. And then there are about 40 or 50 words after that that are all good and noble goals. But first and foremost, operates, maintains, and manages irrigation. And you have a lot of great staff. You've obviously put in a lot of thought and effort. And I want to say that a lot of my best friends are engineers. My son is an engineer. But I think what you need to do here is throw away your specifications and throw away everything you know about how this has worked. And we need you to be so creative that you can find a way to come up with delivering on your mission statement of maintaining irrigation. There's got to be a way. Maybe we haven't thought of it. Maybe you have. Maybe you need to go find a crazy consultant who's, did something like this 50 years ago and everyone said he was a crazy old man. I don't know what you need to do in that respect, but it's in your mission statement. And thank you, Representative Eli, for proposing, possible compensation to our farmers. But we lose those trees, we lose those orchards, we lose those plants and fields, and the money will help the families, but it's going to take a long time to bring them back. And we just can't bear it. So there's got to be a way. And whether it's federal money, state money, whether it's foundation money, I don't know what it is, but we feed people and we feed animals and we can't stop. So I think I had a question in there for you somewhere.
Yeah, so Council,
Okay.
I'm organizing my thoughts and okay. So the reason why I organize my thoughts is I want to be gentle. I really do. But the sad reality that I have to tell the valley is this valley is largely unprepared for the drought that we have. Sorry. The sad reality is this valley is largely not prepared for the drought that we're seeing. And we have, unfortunately, I think, have as a Middle Valley seen signs of what was coming and always believed that the infrastructure would be here and somehow the hydrology would just come about. So I hear what you're saying. I'm an engineer. I solve problems by nature. I do not like to fail. And I will honestly say, I don't think I've failed very often. But in this instance, what you are asking, and I appreciate the comment from the representative about funding, but there's not enough funding to buy enough water, right? Because at the end of the day, If those pumps, if I had a pumping operation that could deliver 40 CFS to you, the reality is the water is likely going to run out on June 19th and there's zero amount of water. So if we're proposing funding for farmers who are going to lose crops, it can't just be for Corrales. We've got to propose funding for the greater part of the Middle Valley who farmers are going to lose traditional farms, right? They're going to have invested crops and they may lose those crops. I don't know. Now, the number of irrigations are different as you go in the valley, as we saw demand come up, but every crop suffers when you take water away. And that's what we're faced with in the Middle Valley. The last drop of water will be prior and paramount water. And when that starts being delivered, priority goes to prior and paramount deliveries, and all other farmers will be cut off. There is no right higher than that. So because I want to be clear, and I've heard, and I've been to farms. I've been to farms up and down this valley, and I've talked with farmers, and I know that they're struggling. It is difficult to be in my position because as the CEO of the MRGCD, I'm supposed to be an advocate for the farmer, right? And yet I have to see my constituents suffer and know that what I can do now is try to invest in infrastructure and have the valley see the need to change how we've done things, to prepare for a reality that may deliver us 20% or more less water. And a portion of that water still has to go down to Texas. We haven't even talked about that tonight. New Mexico faces a difficult challenge because not only are we in drought, not only is El Vado Dam out of commission, but we have a debt that is probably going to spike close to 167,000 acre feet to Texas. So even if we had water and we had a dam, that water would be stored for Texas and unavailable to the Middle Valley, right? And that is the reality that we face. And there is native water available to us. We are 100% run of the river. And me and my team, we're doing everything we can to move the water that we have with tremendous pressure from all sides saying, ag community, give more water, ag community, give more water. And quite frankly, the ag community is giving water that they don't have. Nobody has it. And so we have to start making do with less water. And the Corrales siphon Corrales siphon could be the broken arm in the body, but it's not the cancer killing the body, right? The cancer killing the body is the drought. And unfortunately, it's made a lot worse because of the siphon is broken. And so I sit here saying, please know, counselors, please know, community. I sit behind a desk every day looking at the realities of what we face. I work with the state engineer's office. I work with the federal government. I work with the state government, finding funding and opportunities to do what we can with the resources that we have. But at the end of the day, the MRGCD and my team, and you're right, I have a really good team. And I will tell you, right, that this really good team is up and down this valley getting torn to shreds, right? People come and tell them, you're the reason I don't have water. You're the reason I don't have water. You're the reason I don't have water, right? This team is working as hard as they can to deliver what water they can, to the detriment at times of their families and their personal lives. But they're doing it and they're here because they love what they do. And I say that because I want folks to know, you asked me, pull a miracle, Jason, and do a miracle. And I'm not in the miracle business. That's not my job. I pray for that to happen, right? Somebody else takes care of that. I can't. I have to work with the resources that I have and put out a realistic picture and if the rains come, this will be very different. I'm here telling you how bad this will be. And right now we have a thundercloud out there that may be delivering water and can completely change something in the river. But until I see it happening one time a week, right? Like it happened last year. We got into this situation and we had water continuously coming to us from rain events that kept replenishing the river. Or quite frankly, folks, this is the exact same hydrology that would have done the same thing to us last year. So I am doing everything I can, and I appreciate and I will work with, and I think I have. I've talked to almost every legislator in this room about funding, minus Mr. Eli. I apologize for that. So we are doing everything we can, and we will continue to do that.
All right, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Bill?
Do we, I can, just
Oh, you
one
want one
quick
more?
follow,
Okay.
very short, may I?
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilman. If the rains come, if we see that pattern that you were talking about, how long can we keep the pumps there in case this happens? In case we do get, rain every 10 or 12 days?
So Counselor, at this point in time, there hasn't been a discussion at the board of removing the pumps from the site. So that discussion hasn't even happened at
Okay.
this point in time.
Thank you.
Bill?
Thank you for your presentation and thank you everyone for being here. We're all concerned about the Corrales water situation. I just want to give you a couple thoughts. It just amazes me that in years past, and I know it wasn't on your shoulders, that we've had to wait 85 years to get an up-to-date siphon at the beginning of Corrales. To me, that doesn't make any sense. We all are homeowners here. We take care of our home and we look at things. Are any of your homes have anything that's 85 years old? Mine probably doesn't. So I think in the future, we really need to look ahead and not just look for right now, but look ahead and see what we can do and be forward thinking. Again, to have a wooden siphon in its 2022 is just amazing to me. A couple people have called me about different thoughts of how maybe we could fix things right away. Is there any talk about a bladder that can go through the siphon that can help with the water?
Counselor, yes, we have explored bladder technology about floating it through and blowing it up. Absolutely.
So what do you think about that?
So you have to be able to have a bladder that allows water to flow through it.
Right.
And so the bladder would have to be blown up and be able to then anchor it and keep it in place to stop the break. But I can't dewater to get the bladder in place and then anchor it down so it doesn't float down the siphon. And what folks again doesn't understand, but I don't think folks completely understand, and we are asking these questions, right? And if I had an option, if I had a out of the box option that I thought would work right now, I would give it a shot. But it's because none of those have gone to fruition. This siphon, when you put water in it, pressurizes. So think of it's not the same type of pressure exactly within a water line, but it goes under pressure. And whatever we put in there has to be anchored down, or the siphon's going to take it for a ride down to the other end. And we don't have the ability right now. The siphon is fully connected to the river. So I don't have the ability. I would have to stop the river flowing to drain the water out of the siphon. That's literally what it would take, is we have to stop the Rio Grande to drain the river, to drain the water out of the siphon.
And then put the bladder in the siphon.
And then put the bladder in the siphon and then restart the Rio Grande.
Okay. Also, I was wondering, other places, Albuquerque, Socorro, Berlin, they're still getting their water, correct?
Counselor, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it's really Corrales is the one that's kind of getting, because of the whole siphon thing, we're just not getting our water. And I feel for the people again who have orchards here and have been in farming for their whole lives and their grandparents' lives, that this wasn't addressed earlier. And I know it isn't your fault. I'm not putting blame on anything, but I think we need to look for the future and not just always look for where's the money coming today. We just have to do things right now. We need to be looking to the future. Okay, one last thing. What about the CARES Act? It's not potable water, but it's bringing water to produce food for people. We couldn't kind of get around the language to help with that.
Counselor, I actually tried. I put in for money in Bernalillo County and other places, asking for, because the money went to the counties, right? And then it got distributed out. I've taken my swing at trying to get that money, and based on the wording, the district doesn't qualify.
That's a bummer. Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Stuart, you have a question?
So if I can address one thing, what I would like to say, and Councilor Knight brings up a good point. Prior to my predecessor getting here, there was no capital infrastructure program at the district, and I can't I have no idea why that's not. I don't understand, right? Like that, I wasn't there, I wasn't around, but when Mike Hammond came to the district, we started a capital infrastructure program. That was in the works before I even showed up. We are slowly but surely building a capital infrastructure dollars amount, but I will say that at the end of any given fiscal year, we don't have a ton of money left over to put into it. But what money we do have open, there is a standing resolution from the board of the directors that if we are underspent in any way, that money from that year goes into a capital infrastructure program to start building money to hopefully one day we'll be able to put enough money in to where we won't always have to go asking the state and other folks to fix our infrastructure. So I 100% agree with you. And the district has made that change prior to even me becoming the CEO, and that's the way we're operating now.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Stuart.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. A lot of good information has been presented here, and thank you for coming out tonight and everybody else that's here. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to add much to this, but I am worried that it looks like the flow of the river has narrowed quite a bit. And anytime you narrow a channel, you're going to get a higher flow of water through there. It's probably going to cause more erosion. So anything we put in or anything you do to fix this problem, we may be back in a couple of years because that river is going to get undercut again. Is that a fair statement?
Counselor, that is correct. I don't believe the river's done adjusting at this point in time.
Yeah, so if I understand the way the siphon worked, it worked when the river was flowing across the entire boundary from the east to the west side. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir. The river used to meander way more than it does now.
Yeah, so the way I see it right now is we're going to have a bigger problem because that channel is going to be able to undercut or, erode even around the siphon if we replace it. I still would like to see the siphon replaced. I think Councilor Knight brings up a good point. Why would we want to repair an 80-some-year-old device? And I think it's time to replace it with something new and more sturdier than what we have. So I think that's the approach we're going to have to take. Also, for our representatives, if you're interested in getting money, I think you need to look at grants for our farmers and our people who raise the food around here, because right now, I think if I read this right, they are having to drill wells to supplement the water they're not getting from the MRGCD. And it's costing them money to power those wells and pump that water and buy those water rights that are necessary in order to draw that water out of the groundwater. I don't see that as a permanent solution. I think we're going to have to work better, be smarter, look at new agricultural techniques that reduce the flow of water needed for these lands. But I think Councilor Osselbrook is also correct. Our orchards are one of the big draws down here in the village. And if we lose those, we're going to put a lot of people out of business rather quick. And I think the Wagner Farms would be one of them because those apples and anything coming out of an orchard tends to flow into the local economy and flows out. I don't know what else I can ask for, but other than I think that our representatives need to look at how they can compensate our farmers in the immediate future, because if you're right, the next couple of years are going to be real tough, and we lose those trees, we lose everything around here.
Yeah, and so Counselor, I will say again, Corrales faces a more difficult year than other farmers, but the drought as a whole is the great equalizer. And I will say the whole western part of the United States is getting a wake-up call because we're largely unprepared for it. One of the things that I'm tapped into that most folks aren't, but if you do a little bit of research of what's going on the Colorado River, and it's the same thing happening. We just deal in El Vado, like all of our water that we can store in New Mexico pretty much goes behind one of those big dams. And from a national standpoint in the Southwest, this drought, I think we may get relief every now and then for a year, but by comparison, we used to look at, okay, we get 2 bad years in 5, but we may very well get 4 bad years in 5 now. Right? Something's changed, whether it is a shift, a decadal shift in temperature, whether it's climate change. That's not my job to worry about. What I know is I just have less water and a really old system that as a CEO I've inherited and now I got to go fix. And just please know that I'm committed to doing the job. I want to do it for a long time, and we're going to be professional about it. And we're going to go address problems. I do appreciate, again, the offer and the opportunity to seek funding. I do think that it is warranted that and that the legislature and the state look at something that will help farmers in terms of if they do lose crops. I know, and I have to mention this out there, and I know there are a lot of folks that don't like this as well, but the state did do one thing this year, which is provide money for a fallowing program. And I know that doesn't work for trees, but it does work for, if you're in this community and you're watering grass, if you really love your grass, that's great. But if your grass is not that important and you are understanding the greater issue among the valley, then we have growers in Corrales, we have growers in every county up here that would ask folks to make that sacrifice so that they can continue to do what they love, grow crops for cattle and for any type of animal, grow chili, grow fruits, grow vegetables, because that's somewhat of the mentality that it's going to have to take. Right now, we can't force that action because I don't define beneficial use. It's defined by the state, but we need individual citizens to look at what they're doing and say, hey, you know what? We live in a desert, and right now we're not water flush. It may be time that we let go of greenery that is not vital, so that the water can go to growing and the production of food that is vital. And so I agree with you. I do think a shift has to change within all of the Southwest about the water, about the use of water. And I think the drought, if it lasts as long as folks are predicting, is going to force it to happen one way or another.
So let me ask you this. I know you don't like federal funding, but have you gone to the senators and our representatives directly about funding?
And I want to be clear. I have used federal funding and I will do it, but and I don't not like it. It just takes a lot longer to put on the ground. And yes, this is a topic that I have talked with Representative Stansbury about, that I have been talking with Senator Heinrich's office. Yes, we sent a board member to Washington, D.C. That was able to meet up there on issues related to drought. This is not something we are playing in every arena that we can to bring eyes to the Rio Grande Basin, because again, I think it is right for this country to look at the Colorado River, but they shouldn't do that to the detriment of everywhere else around. And I think people are not as up to speed with what we're facing from Colorado down to Texas on the Rio Grande River. And we have folks doing that right now. I think Mike Hammond at the state engineer's office is plugging away as hard as he can at that. Again, I know Representative Stansbury is fantastic from a water standpoint. She knows her stuff and she's working as hard as she can. We have a lot of folks from New Mexico in the federal government, and we are trying to use them to push some of that funding our way and hopefully make it easier to use, that we don't get the funding year one and not get it on the ground year 6. Get the funding year 1 and maybe get some of it on the ground year 1 and the rest of it on the ground year 2. Right? That's really what we need.
Do you know, there's the siphon, the only design that in New Mexico, where is it unique to Corrales area or is it used elsewhere?
So on this river, I have 2 other siphons. I have a siphon on San Felipe Pueblo, and then I have a siphon right about center point of Albuquerque that moves water from the west to the east side. And
What are their designs like? I mean, are they staves like what we got, or?
Fortunately, and again, please, I was not around back then. Those are concrete.
Okay.
Jason, wait a second. Jason,
Yes, sir.
if the river does go dry, will that facilitating working on the siphon?
It could, sir. Yeah, it could. It would make it easier. The
You wouldn't have to
siphons-
fight the river.
The siphon would likely have groundwater, and I do believe at that point in time, if the river is dry, we would be able to pump it to the degree to maybe empty it again.
Okay. I saw a hand over here. Bill, you wanted to say something or ask something?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is it just a question of money to replace the siphon?
Right now, I'd say time and money, but I think the design won't be finishing design, picking an alternative in design won't be, I don't believe will be the critical path. It'll be getting funding. unless something changes.
So if you had a design to replace the wooden siphon from 1933, how much would that cost? A ballpark.
All right, ballpark, I'm gonna give it to you, 3.5 million to 10. I don't know yet, somewhere
So
between
$10 million.
3.5 to 10.
Okay, so $10 million on the outside to replace the siphon would solve the problem.
Yes, sir.
You wouldn't have to worry about pumps. You wouldn't have to worry about the three-phase, wouldn't have to worry about any of that.
I still like to have 3-phase power there, but I wouldn't have to worry about pumping.
And what kind of response are you getting from when you speak directly to the federal delegation, Senator Heinrich, Senator Lujan?
I think typical responses of infrastructure requests that we send in our we send in our write-ups about it, get them informed, so that as they can funnel money to the sources. Because right now, the federal government still has to send the money to an entity. Like Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District is not going to get money just directly from the federal government. That's probably going to go in the form of either sending it to the state, maybe, or sending it to the Bureau of Reclamation or the Corps. That money's not going to come directly to me. So it's still got to be appropriated according to federal law.
So if I could, 2 quick questions. Have you spoken directly to the governor about this? And secondly, have you spoken directly to the Army Corps of Engineers, this is their mandate to fix stuff like this?
I have not spoken to the governor, and a solution like this would not be the Army Corps of Engineers. It would be in the Bureau of Reclamation's camp, the Department of Interior, or the USDA, and I have spoken to them. Yes.
In response?
Same. There are funding opportunities there. Put your application in.
Okay. Jason, thank you so much. We really appreciate this. And once again, all you out there who have questions, please contact his office and or attend the MRGCD meeting.
Mayor, these cards will be set on the corner table right there.
Okay.
My cell phone number is on here. I will get back to you at some point in time, relatively close to your call, maybe the next day, but I will get back to you if you have questions. Mayor, councilors, governmental representatives who are in the office, community, thank you as a whole. I know I don't have great information for you, but I do appreciate the opportunity to be here. And again, I will answer questions if given if you guys want to.
No questions from the audience. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on. Next is administrator's report. Maybe we ought to let the crowd settle down first. Okay, we're going to take a brief break while we. Yeah.
Hello. If everyone could please take
I
a
want to
seat.
call the meeting back to order, please.
Please take a seat. We're going to call the meeting back to
Y'all
order.
please take your seats or whatever. Okay, well, thank you for that brief timeout. I really appreciate that. Can you hear me, Melanie?
Kind of.
Can you hear me now?
I know.
Bring it a little closer.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear
Oh,
you.
wow. I can hear
Got to get
myself.
up close and personal with the
Oh,
mic.
you told me, I know. Okay, so the next thing up is administrator's report.
We have a short report tonight. We'll start with Tanya. She's on screen.
Is Tanya here?
I'm here. I cannot get there. Now I think I've got it. You guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor, Council, Administrator Curry. I'm going to try to be brief since we've been so long so far, but I do want to discuss COVID, and then I'll do a brief thing on monkeypox. The big thing right now is we know we're in a surge. The state actually had their first press conference in 3 months today about COVID. I'm sure everyone that was in the room knows at least one person who has recently had COVID who has it currently. The big things I'm hearing from the people that are calling me that have gotten it and are trying to seek treatment is they thought it was safe. Right now we are in yellow. And what yellow means by the CDC masking is that there's a lot of COVID out there. And if you're over 65, if you have any of the risk factors, overweight, diabetes, heart problems, lung problems, you should be masking, especially in crowds, because people are still getting it and some are getting very sick. The thing that's different, so far in June, we've had 33 cases in 8 days. So that's 4.1 cases a day. Last year in June, we had 10. 6, and the year before that, we had 10 cases in June. The thing that's different now is there are treatments, but people need to be accessing those treatments, and they need to be noticing that they have COVID early on, because the best treatment is Paxlovid, and Paxlovid must be started within 5 days of symptoms. I'm getting a lot of phone calls from people who thought it was allergies, just a slight runny nose, and they're missing that time. Then you go down to the second level of treatment, which is remdesivir, and that's given 3 days a week by IV, 3 times, 3 different days in a row by IV at an infusion center. And the third level would be molnupiravir, which is a 30% efficacy. And there is one monoclonal antibody, and that's also a tier 3. So those are the really, really important things. So let's talk about the cases. Today in the state, we had 1,100 cases for a positivity of 12.6%. Today, Dr. Scrace, he believes that it's anywhere 3 to 7 times higher for home tests and people not testing. Federal's looking at 5 to 10 times higher. So 100,000 cases, we could be having 500,000 cases a day in the United States again. But we do have treatments. We are mainly BA2 Omicron stealth, but BA2.121 is almost at 20% in this area and slowly taking over. BA4 and BA5 are coming, and they have decided that previous infection alone does not protect you from BA4, BA5. So people really need to be careful because it's definitely out there. I've had a lot of people who have called me and they've spread it to 4 or 5 others before they knew they had COVID. There are ways to get treatment. I'm still running into doctors who are like, oh, let's wait 3 or 4 days for treatment. But what was really stressed today was if you have a positive test, whether it's home or a PCR, you have one risk factor. That can be your age, that can be your overweight, that can be diabetes, that can be you're a smoker, any of those things, and you have symptoms of COVID, runny nose, scratchy throat, fever, anything, you need to be in touch with the doctor to get treatment. If your doctor doesn't know how to do it and get the treatment for you, and I will tell you, a lot of people call me Friday night or Saturday morning and their PCP doesn't have on call. Call your specialist. Cardiologists have been great to work with recently. Also on the Village website, the first thing under COVID-19 resources is the whole list of, you can do a telehealth visit. They'll go over your health history and send you the prescription for Paxlovid, which is working really, really well. We did have 140 people in the hospital today. That's up from 128 yesterday. We only had 9 people ventilated today. 15 were ventilated yesterday, but we had 13 deaths. Booster shots are definitely, don't wait on your booster shot for an upcoming vaccine, the variant vaccine, which I'll go over here in a few minutes, because you're going to get one of those anyway. You will be qualified for one of them. We are still getting people in the hospital. I'm looking at my phone because I've got it on there. Sorry, we were vaccinating, so I didn't make it home. In the last four weeks, the data shows that 44.8% of all cases were people who had been vaccinated and boosted. Most of those people thought they were completely safe to go out with no precautions being boosted. You can still get it. And if you have certain health conditions, you can still get very sick and or die. 36.8% of them were hospitalized, and 36.8% of those who died were vaccinated and boosted. On the meetings I was on with the echo call with the physicians on Monday, a lot of that is because people are waiting. They're not getting treatment. They're going to the hospital day 10 or 11, and they're already really, really sick. They have underlying conditions. So getting people to get treatment early if you're at risk is very, very important. Moderna did finish their trial study of their Omicron specific fall vaccine. It had wonderful, wonderful outcomes. I believe CDC's ACIP meeting is going to be discussing that on June 28th. The other good news is the vaccine for 6 months to 4 years old for Pfizer is going to be heard. Moderna is going to have one from 6 months to 6 years old. Those will be heard coming up the 17th, 18th, 9th, 19th of June. We have already been we've already been asked to get our orders in. We placed an order for that last week. Corrales has been approved for vaccination, and we will be getting those pediatric vaccines in on the 20th of June. We will not be able to use them until both FDA and CDC have approved it and written the authorizations, and the state has approved it. Really, really quickly on monkey, I'm looking at my notes, sorry, on monkeypox. There are over 1,000 cases worldwide now. It has been an endemic disease in parts of Africa for years. It is not normally, it's in 33 countries, and it's not normally considered endemic. 25 cases in the United States, none in New Mexico. But it is a DNA virus, not an RNA virus, and it is made a lot of changes from the last time we saw cases. They're usually from travel or people importing animals. It has made 49 different changes. So the CDC and other epidemiologists believe it may have been lurking around and being misdiagnosed. The ECHO call with all the UNM docs and docs from around the world on Monday talked about how normally it's pretty easy to test someone or think they have monkeypox because fever is very prevalent. Usually it starts with fever, swollen lymph nodes, then you get these pustules that look like pimples, hands, face, body parts. This one is only 41% of all the cases right now are having fever. Not everyone's getting swollen lymph nodes, and they're not getting the normal rash and the pustules that they are. They've asked everyone in the medical profession, we have none here in New Mexico, to be on the lookout for that so they can try to get it. The animals that hold monkeypox tend to be rodents, and they can pass it back to humans. So I will continue to monitor monkeypox, still not worried about it, but I know that Councilor Murray had asked about it, so I wanted to dig a little deeper. And of course, precautions that should be used for COVID are also good for monkeypox. Monkeypox can be spread respiratory, long-term contact with someone who has it. But the most way people get it is close physical contact. Petting can carry it. And it does have fomite capabilities, meaning it stays alive on surfaces. You can pick it up that way. So cleaning hands, those kind of things, social distancing, those things if it did show up in New Mexico. We do have a stockpile of a monkeypox specific vaccine. CDC has already ordered more. It was approved in 2019 for 18 and older. The smallpox vaccine, which we have a very large national stockpile of, is 85% effective. We are looking and doing some research on those of us who did get smallpox vaccines, if we still have any titer and any protection from that. And I will be happy to, the last thing is if you got a runny nose and you've been out in public, get a test. If you need a home test, not my favorite because I have seen it take 2 to 3 days of symptoms to pick up. Get a home test. Curative free testing, state's free testing will be going away. It looks like June 30th. But I will keep updating where you can get PCR tests if you need them. But if you have any of those symptoms, make sure before you go out, because I've had very upset people in the village that have given COVID to other at-risk people, and they really thought it was allergies. And I'll be happy to stand for questions.
Rick. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You did that real quickly and I didn't catch it all. Your final statement, how accessible are tests in Corrales? Short of going up to CVR and getting paying 10, 15 bucks for a home test.
So I have home tests available if people call me. We still have some here.
Okay.
And the curative site at Balloon Fiesta, you can log on, put all your information in, and they have the rapid PCR 30-minute turnaround. CVS, I believe, is still doing the 2 to 3 day ship out. And there has been delays on some of those because nationwide testing is up because cases are up.
Okay, so you have some available. We can go through you if we have.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? Thank you, Tanya.
You're well, oh,
Oh, did you
Thank
want to say something, Stuart?
I'm clapping because.
Oh, you wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Very good.
And Tanya, thank you for all your direct personal care of my COVID experience.
Well, I've got lots of them out there. And anyone, if you do have COVID questions, my phone number is everywhere. Please, please call me. And I do follow up. If you call and say you have COVID, I still follow up with you almost daily.
Okay, thank you. Ron?
The last thing I just wanted to mention is that the folks that live along Meadowlark on the south side of the street, we are proceeding with the trail, and one of the first things that we need to do is notify them of some of the vision clearance triangle that we have to comply with. And so they'll be receiving probably about 8 homeowners will be receiving letters from me in the next week, telling them what, or asking them what we want them to do to be in compliance to help us out so that we can move the trail along. Our big hope here is that we can go along with this smoothly so that the project that has gone on for longer than we'd like to think can reach a conclusion as far as the trail goes.
This is west of Meadowlark, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Loma Larga.
Yeah, west of Loma Larga on the south side of Meadowlark. So if you have any folks, John, you just be aware that these letters are going out.
Yes, ma'am.
I just had a quick question, Mayor. Thank you. Are those registered letters that they receive?
Yes, they will be.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Mayor,
Yes, Bill.
Ron, a quick question. At one of our last meetings, you indicated that the asphalt at Salsi Park would be removed by June 15th. Are we on schedule for that? Do you know?
I have been told by Michael that it's gone. They still need to do a little cleanup and kind of grade it over.
Yeah.
He may be on screen. Here.
Oh,
I'm not
Michael,
sure.
you there?
Yes, Mayor, councilors, it's all gone.
Great. I was up there at the end of last week, so I apologize for not getting up there today before ask the question, but thanks very much for doing that. It's great.
Michael's a busy man.
Yes. I know.
Very, yeah.
All he has to do now is produce water and then
Okay.
He might be able to do that.
I know.
Nothing else. All right. So
Thank you, Mayor.
thank you. So now it's time for a counselor's forum. Gosh, you guys just keep talking. Mel.
Okay, the village of Corrales really shined this past weekend. There were the usual activities that occur in Corrales every weekend and month, like the growers market and First Sunday for the Artist. But this past weekend also saw the garden tour, the outdoor adventure day at the rec center, and the library book sale as well. I think we're in debt to the great staff and volunteers that help make these events a success. Corrales is a great place to live in, and we shared Corrales last weekend with people from all over our state. And it was just a great weekend to be a Corraleño.
We have great volunteers. We should always respect our volunteers and appreciate them. Anytime you have a chance to give them a pat on the back or what, it's very important. Because many times they don't. I shouldn't say many times, but occasionally they don't get treated well. But I think that's great. We have great volunteers.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, it's time for Corrales Forum. Do you have anybody signed up?
We have a bunch of people. I'm not sure if everybody is still here. First on the list is Tony Tafoya. And sir, if you could state your name and address for the record, you'll have 3 minutes.
I don't remember how to do that anymore.
That's a good sign, isn't it?
Tony Tafoya. Retired, tired. I wanted Jason to be here, but I guess they're gone.
That's okay. You can share it with us.
I'd like to share this with you. Last week I took a little trip, not that kind of trip, but a trip. I went through Bernalillo, Alameda, Los Ranchos, Atrisco, Los Lunas, Belen, and all the way down to Socorro.
Can you get a little closer to the mic, Tony?
Sure.
Yeah.
These valleys are green, Corrales is not. The pecan orchard on the western hills south of Belen is by far the greenest, and it's up on a hill. I think that's a pumping situation there. The alfalfa fields, pastures, gardens, big and small, are thriving. We are struggling in our valley. Corrales is just starting its third irrigation. My third irrigation is 2 weeks out and will probably be out of water before I get that one. The irrigators along the Sandoval lateral have missed the last 2 irrigations for the past 2 years in a row. I hope this isn't the third one. I was hoping that Jason was here so that I could ask him about a third pump at Romero Road. That would go directly into the Sandoval lateral or into the acequia so that 2 ditches could run at once instead of just 1 ditch. And the way it is now, we're getting water once a month. It's just not quite enough.
I know.
I was hoping that we could do some temporary repairs. And I'd like to share with you the little diagram that MRGCD sent out. This is the flow of the river. And I was thinking they could put an underground pipe right into the river itself through the siphon at the west end of the river. And that would be fed directly from the river into the main canal. I think that would be a very simple situation. I think it can be done. They've got the engineers, they've got the personnel and the equipment. I know I could have done that years ago with my little crew. But
You had a really good crew.
oh yeah, part of it's still there.
Have you, I know we're not supposed to do this in Coriolanus Forum, but have you sent Jason something like this? Emailed it to him?
No, not yet.
I think it's worthwhile.
I might go to the meeting next week.
It's probably even better.
Already, thank you much.
Thank you very much, Tony. Appreciate that.
Okay,
Nice. Did I leave it up here? Oh, you got it.
next on the list is Clay Trafton. Clay here. Donnie Leonard. Manuel Sidabaca. Elan Silverblatt.
I think they're probably all going to want
Yeah.
to talk to Jason, but
Yeah.
a lot of them talked to Jason before he left.
Robert Martinez. Genova Aragon. Teresa Lopez. Juan Lopez. Danny, I can't read the last name. Anthony Wagner.
Okay. Did they leave or leaving?
They're out there talking to Jason.
See, that's probably what they wanted to do anyway.
Yep. And Jimmy Wagner was the last one.
So I guess we'll move on to new business then. So what we brought forth, as you can see, is resolution 22-35, consideration action and approval of resolution 22-35, granting village administration authority to seek loan funding from Clean Water State Revolving Fund to be used to construct additional areas of the Corrales Fire Suppression Line and Angel Hill Water Tower. Now, to give you a little background, this is a loan fund. It's a fund, basically, that provides loans at 0.01% interest, up to 30 years payback. And you only pay interest on the money that you use. And if you don't need it and you don't use it, you don't pay interest on it. So the concept was that we would be able to draw, this would be like having a line of credit to draw on as we construct our fire suppression line and as we apply for FEMA grants to. Chief, would you like to come speak? Briefly. But that was the concept. We have individual who's working on both of those, and I'll let the chief talk about it. It's actually his idea.
Mayor, thank you. Council, as Mayor was explaining, as you know, I've been before you describing, the fire suppression system that we've been building over the years throughout the village of Corrales. As you know, I'm very ambitious in trying to find funding with the help of my staff and Tanya and administration. We have sought, legislative funding as part of my ICIP plan every year. We have gone out for fire grants that we are, through our fire protection fund grant, where we can use funding to help extend the lines, which has helped, build the Loma Larga system. We do them little pieces at a time. The Angel Tower, the water tank and the infrastructure there, we have been awarded that state ICIP money to do the design and engineering of that.
That was the plan.
And we are also, another plan that we're trying to do is run water along the Andrews drainage from Valverde all the way down to the Bosque. So we have lots of projects. And again, we're seeking lots of different funds, and the mayor, Administrator Curry, we have sat down, we've looked at some of these options to try to maybe complete some of our projects that are on, that are ongoing, and improve our fire suppression and invest these dollars to where it's going to impact, as many properties as we possibly can. So I'll stand here for any questions pertaining to the fire suppression system. I think the mayor can cover more
Councilor
in
Waldman?
detail the
Yeah, I was just wondering if you have an estimate of the total cost at the end of this project, fire suppression, et cetera.
the total funds for the whole complete build out of like what we'd like to see in the village of Corrales? No,
Yeah, okay.
I don't. Because it's for lack of a better term, it's very fluid. As we're trying to,
Sure.
design this master plan through the village of Corrales, we run into, complications of, no, we can't go there because we don't have a village of Corrales easement. That's gonna be a private property investment. So we're always trying to figure out a way to where to make our lines go. I did some preliminary numbers though, because I anticipated that question. So for example, and I hope everyone can hear me. Let me just kind of pick. So down here off of Andrews, I know that's, one that they're trying to do an Andrews plan and a pathway and stuff. So that's turned out to be one of my high priorities, right? I want to get the pipe in the ground before they actually start going forth and building roads and trails, etc. To go from East Valverde all the way down to the Bosque at the bridge at Andrews, it's roughly 9,453 feet. Now I could be off a little bit on that. I'm using Google Earth as my navigation. Roughly $100 a linear foot for pipe right now, but as the market is changing, $100 per linear foot is a installation roughly and supplies, but that could change. Is roughly $945,000. So Angel Tower, another example, but this one is just changing ever since we did the plan. The tank, construction of the water tank and well and other miscellaneous stuff, we're looking at 1.5 mil for the water tank and the well. And then the line to go down from the tank to Loma Larga would be roughly, that one's a little more expensive, like $110 per linear foot, roughly $867,000.
So this 5 million.
Yeah.
Would cover. should
So
cover-
5 million gives us some cushion, as the mayor explained, give us, some cushion to get started, still keep doing what we do as far as seeking federal dollars, apply for these fire grants, and keep trying to build and maybe use some of this as matching funds. If we have a grant here, we have federal, we all put it together. ICIP, I still, I know that's another discussion for tonight. I still want to keep that a high priority on the ICIP and look at our legislators for those fundings. Yeah. So I hope that answered your question.
So even with all that Anthony has done, which is fantastic,
Yeah.
we don't really have, we have a plan, but we don't have a real engineered design. Because there are a lot of critical factors, especially if we go up, was it 250 feet?
Yeah, so it's like roughly 250-foot elevation difference from the top of Angel Hill to Loma Larga. So, we have some calculations we have to configure as far as, velocities and pressures.
And we want to also, and while we're doing that, or while we're looking for funds for that, because, we really think that FEMA would like this project. And that's one of the things that Chuck Thomas is trying to do for us. We want to complete the loop because we have 3 towers, right? Or 4.
So
Counting the school, we have 4, right?
Right, so we have the fire station, main fire station pumping station, we have Loma Larga pumping station, we have the rec center pumping station, and then we have a private, which is the APS school. Our concept is eventually to link all these systems together, so we have redundancies built in. We've increased our capacity of water from each system by tying them in together and linking them.
But this has become such a big deal, this Bosque problem. I mean, we could have a fire tomorrow.
Yeah.
And if it's blowing from the south to the north, it could get the whole village. And it wouldn't take all that long. So we would like to have this basically a line of credit. It's going to have to go through the same process as anything else we borrow, go through DFA. It's better than bonds because it doesn't take any time. It's virtually no interest. So it doesn't really cost the taxpayers all that much. And we're probably going to be paying it with from our revenue, our general revenue fund. Because we only pay on the part that we borrow. We don't pay on the whole 5 million. Like if we borrow
30 years.
and if we did borrow 5 million, we've got 30 years to pay it back. And that's not our plan, obviously, but I mean, it's just in case, you never know. We don't want to get in a situation where we're looking at this thing and saying, oh, gee, this is too much money to spend for this. We're talking about our entire village, potentially. And it only has to happen once. So we need to move ahead. We need to get this done. And so that's the plan. And that's why we're asking for you to say, sure, direct us to go ahead and do this. We can't do anything without your approval, anything with money. We have to come back and tell you, here's what we're doing. Here's what it is. Here's what it's going to cost. This is how we pay it back, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, we would like your direction to, we'd like for you to approve this resolution so we can go ahead and get it done. We think it would happen pretty fast, actually. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, a question for Ron. Ron, if we get some ICIP monies for this project, can we use those money to pay back a loan on an ICIP money?
It's a good question, Counselor.
I would not think so.
I don't remember that, but
If you get ICIP for your fire protection system, that's what it's for.
right, and we'll be using it for that, but just we'll be paying back a loan. That was the question.
Yeah, and remember, it's our goal is to continue that. So as we get those funds, then we don't borrow the money. That's just sort of here, we need to get this done. Here, let's take 150,000 or whatever.
Going, I just
Yeah.
wondered if we got the money, we could use it to pay it off. That
The interest rate is so low and the amount of money that we carry in our general fund on a daily basis, we could fund any interest that we pay almost directly out of that.
So either way, we're gonna do well. So
Yeah.
especially if we're gonna be doing a lot of ICIP based on the previous discussion we had, our ICIP monies might be better well spent there.
And-
Yes,
And just to, not to,
but we don't get that money until next July.
and
Commander.
this money comes fast, and some of these monies are monies that have come from the Environmental Protection Agency. And they're big on passing money as fast as they can.
Good.
In fact, they try to force the state, literally force the state to use the money that's out there. States have been reluctant to use it or pass because it's a loan. But this, at this point, is damn near a grant.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
But we do have to pay it back, Yes, sir, John.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick comment, unifying the tanks into a single supply, extending that line out of the Bosque. The Romero fire was the only warning we're gonna get. And next time, it's just not gonna, we're not gonna be able to knock it down with what we've got.
Stuart.
I was just curious, are we, or have we planned to do the engineering, pre-engineering necessary to connect all these various tanks?
That's the plan.
Okay.
That's what the idea of taking the money. Like I said, Anthony's done a fantastic job and he knows a lot of stuff. But we would like to kind of get it all coordinated and put together the correct way and have all I's dotted and T's crossed, so that anybody could come in and look at this plan and know exactly what Anthony has been talking about for 20 years.
Yeah, excellent.
Yes, sir.
Just a quick question. Could you tell me what's going on at the Loma Larga pumping station? There's an awful lot of trucks there. Is that a new well you're
Mayor, Counselor, all those trucks are just staged there because there's no room. It's the contractor to start the cell tower at the fire station. They've started the process of drilling to pour the concrete for the new tower so they can demo the monopole in the front. Yeah. Yeah, that's, everyone's asking. I was like, well, I need water. And it's a 12-foot drill bore. So,
exactly?
but yeah, that's what that's for.
This is for a cell tower?
The cell tower at the fire station. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, any other questions? So can I get a motion?
So move.
So I have a motion to approve Resolution 22-35, granting Village Administration Authority to seek loan funding for the CWSRF. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Counselor Knight. Any further discussion? Any other comments? How do you vote? Counselor Muir,
Yes.
Counselor Wallman,
Yes.
Counselor Knight,
Aye.
Counselor Alsabrook,
Aye.
Counselor Murray.
Yes.
Everybody voted aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Appreciate your comments. So next, we're going to discuss, and this is just to discuss, because we want you guys to look all this over and think about it and read what the different department heads have said. This is the 2023, 2027 ICIP list for the Village of Kraus. Look through it and think about the things that we've discussed in the past, we've discussed here today. And you've probably heard from the department heads many times when you've been asking questions at other occasions. There aren't a lot of changes, and most of the changes actually come from the fire department. They seem to need a lot of money. But it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Okay. Does anybody have anything specific? Oh, also, if you have something that you don't see on here that you would like to add, and you kind of have an idea of the ballpark figure, and you know which department it's in, you can call the department head, you can write it down, you can put the number down, you can ask them what they think. You can call me, you can ask me what I think, call Mr. Curry. The idea is that we want to try to put together a plan that is very inclusive of the things we need. But in my experience in dealing with the ICIP, you focus on the top 5 and you really push the top 3. So think of it that way. All of them are important. We can't get any money for any of them if they're not on here. But we want to really push the 3 things that you think are the most important. Right now, the most important seem to be fire suppression, sewer line. What's the one I'm blocking on? Oh, we can always use money for the rec center.
I have a question.
Yes.
What would the storm and flood hazard mitigation entail?
I think we're talking primarily about road drainage, aren't we? Yeah, you see, the Village of Kraus is responsible for our own roads and drainage. SCAFCA doesn't enter into that because of the volume involved. These are surface, surface flows that have impacts on homes. And there aren't that huge amount of flow rate or volume, but it's enough to cause damage.
Also making sure the village is meeting its responsibility for ponds that are required.
Correct. Correct. We need to have ponds on our property too.
Right, so the village could buy property that's and use those for ponding or for holding water then?
Ron, I'm going to defer that to you.
The idea that we're talking about here is the property we already own, making sure that we're fulfilling our obligation to make sure that the ponds are up to date. We're pretty good in that area, but if we need to buy property, that's becomes a whole different question as far as how much of that property, or if we take an easement or ask for an easement for a ponding.
Yes, sir, Stuart.
So Michael Chavis is asking for 16 million. I presume that's the total.
Sewer.
Yeah, for the sewer. But I mean, that's 16 million is the total cost over the entire.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. The other thing I've kind of asked for, this was years ago when I was on P and Z. A lot of our roads, especially coming off of the West Mesa, the ditches are filled in. And it seems to me that we need to go back in and kind of excavate those areas where that water was supposed to be directed off the road and into the ditches itself. And is there any plan to maybe fund some of that for Michael, so we can take care of some of those places where it's filled in? Because I mean, even on my street, I can go down to my neighbor's house and I can see part of a culvert sticking up out of the ground. And there used to be a ditch. I mean, when they probably put the subdivision in there, was probably a ditch along both sides of the road, but it's all since filled in. So,
Michael, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, Mayor, Counselor, Administrator Curry. So if you notice in the ICIP, we've actually taken off the Vector truck because we're taking delivery of our brand new one on Tuesday.
That's right.
So what we'll be doing is we'll be clearing the culverts. That way we can clear out the dirt, because right now with the culverts plugged, they're just going to fill up again. So that is part of the plan, is to go in there and really remediate all these issues on our BART ditches and everything.
yeah, because I mean, especially like if you come off Solar Hill, I think is one of them, the road is just flat straight across and there's no bar ditch at all. So, it was just a thought that I had that maybe we should be funding.
Well, bar ditches are good. They're good to, they get the stuff away, but they also collect silt.
Yeah.
Because when the flow is slow, it tends to settle out.
Yeah.
And so they do need to be cleaned out. Yes, to answer your, an earlier question you had.
Yeah.
But yeah, I forgot if he'd gotten the truck, and that will help clean out many of the culverts that have been obstructed with the silt over the years. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Just a quick question about Corrales Road, Pathway, Main Street. Just not sure, the total $1.5 million over, or roughly, for 3 years, or I guess it's 2 years. Is that just to find the nooks and crannies where we don't need DOT to bless us? Or does DOT's unilateral decision sort of eliminate that?
Where is it? I'm not.
Near the bottom of the first page,
Oh,
26478.
yeah, I see it. I don't know where that number came from, John. Go ahead.
Counselor, that's kind of a carry forward from years past. And it really doesn't take into consideration their current situation with the DOT. There's still, I know that Counselor Murray's had some conversation or attempted to have some conversation with some of the folks at DOT regarding comparing us to Hamus Springs. And so that's still out there. But realistically speaking, again, from what the mayor and I have been told from the conversations that we've had, the project is not going to fly unless we turn the town upside down.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to leave it on there. It may never make the top 5, but you never know when legislators are going to find a little pet project they want to put something in, and that'll give us the exposure we need to.
Yeah, I doubt they'll just throw out $1 million though. Yeah, so look through them and see what you like, and sort of in your when you're evaluating them, put a number next to them where you think they might rank. And we will have a further discussion on this in July, because we have to put this together and send this up to the state.
DFA by
DFA. And
it's a month earlier than it has been in the past years.
yeah, we
So
kind of
that's why
want
we
to.
have to consider it in July rather than in August.
Yes,
Just a quick question. We've had several discussions on the library annex.
yes.
The numbers seem to be a bit off here. I think the estimate was originally for $180,000. They've raised $90,000, which would leave 90, and it's listed here at 270.
I have no clue. I don't know. You want to talk? Go ahead.
The project, to put it politely, is still in a planning stage. There appears to be some differences between the library and the library board and Focal at this point. And at the library board meeting last night, there was some controversy as to how they were going to proceed forward. But, the last time we looked at this was right at the beginning of April, where there was a meeting for the first time with members of Focal, members of the library board, and members of the Parks and Recreation Commission. And so what was asked for then is for Focal and the library board to present a plan to Parks and Recreation as how they want to go forward with this. That has not happened yet. And so again, trying to be, there's still a lot of controversy going forward, but the administration, as far as seeing the long-term cost of this project, we haven't seen that plan yet or been able to analyze anything that they've given us to it.
And I know it may feed into something that has to do with a later discussion in terms of spacing and location.
There's a lot of opinions out there.
Yeah, yeah, great, thank you.
Okay. Any more? All right, let's go and move to the closed executive session. I need a motion to take us into closed session pursuant to NMSA 1978, section 1015-1H8. We'll convene an executive session for the discussion of the purchase, acquisition, or disposal of real property or water rights by the public body. Do I have that motion?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to go into executive session. Should I do this by roll call? I should do it by roll call. How do you, Councilor Muir, how do you vote?
Oh, yes.
Councilor Woolman,
Aye.
Councilor Knight,
Aye.
Councilor Alsabrook,
Aye.
and Councilor Murray.
Yes.
All right, so we'll go into executive session. 6:30. How did you like 6? Is it a problem?
6 fine with me.
About June? 21st is our next meeting. And then after that, I was going to have a July 6th meeting. We'll talk about that. Go ahead and make your motion. Now make your motion, President.
I move we come out of executive session.
Okay,
Second.
I have a motion and a second to come out of closed session. Councilor Muir, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilor Woolman,
Aye.
Councilor Knight,
Aye.
Councilor Alsabrook,
Aye.
Councilor Murray.
Oh, yeah, I.
Okay, so,
Are these back
so-
on or have they ever been off?
so,
I turned them off.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
so,
You snuck in. Okay.
the future agenda items, we're sort of filled up to the 21st already.
One sec.
I'm sorry.
Mayor, we need to do the report and confirm that
Oh,
what happened in closed session. I'll be real brief.
okay.
The council did meet in closed session in regard to the identified item on the open meetings agenda in regard to potential acquisition of real property. No decisions were made and no other matters were discussed.
Thank you. So on the 21st of June, we're going to have 3 presentations, which will probably take quite a while. One is Steve Montiel from MRMPO. Congratulations to Stuart Murray for making that arrangement. The animal services upgrades will be discussed at that time. And then Amy Bell is going to talk to us about the administrative parking lot and upgrades.
Oh, and we have AJ Pacheco too. So we have 4 presentations.
Oh, yeah, AJ Pacheco wants to be on here too. You don't have him on here.
We didn't remember that when I made the,
No, I just saw it before I
Draft
came here and I thought, oh, I forgot to tell you. And I still
Yeah.
forgot to tell you. And I haven't talked to him since he said he wanted to be on. AJ Pacheco is the, what do you call him? He's a local representative for Teresa Leger Fernandez. And she's offered to help us get money, even though she doesn't really represent this area, this district. So he may say, no, we don't really represent you guys because Melanie's our representative.
Right, that just changed.
As of November.
Yeah.
Oh, she's still.
I think Teresa's still.
Still with us here.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then we'll let him come. They're really eager. They're really eager to help with regard to the fire suppression system, especially. She's really focused on that. So because of that, I thought that we didn't have to have a huge meeting. Oh, here it is. We have a number of people who are being appointed to different committees, commissions, whatever. Then we have to go back to the fireworks restriction renewal. We have a budget adjustment reaction. And then there's the DOT project extension for Michael, so he can get paid. And then we're going to do a liquor license hearing for Milagro, and then we talk about the land. That's when we're going to have the vote. Okay? That sounds like enough to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are there any other things that you might want to put on a meeting in July? Stuart, do you have something specific?
Well, I was just thinking, you know, if something expeditiously comes up,
Well, there are grants that may come up that we may have to
yeah,
just, apply for and get
I
permission
would
for.
just say, you know, if the opportunity exists, let's get a special meeting or.
Well, we can plan it. We don't necessarily have to do it if we don't have much, but I think we're going to have plenty. So July 6th is okay with everybody?
Yep.
Yes.
6 o'clock, okay with everybody?
Yes.
All right, so we'll do that.
I have one quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Melanie, I got something from you about active shooter plants or something?
Yes.
Is that for us too, or is that
It
just
is.
for the regular staff?
Yeah.
Yes. You can go morning or afternoon, right? It's
Exactly.
Either or,
Yep.
chief?
Did you get that?
Go either morning or afternoon?
It's 20.
And we need to tell you in advance?
You tell me in advance.
Yeah, this is,
Yeah.
Mayor, council, it's not a law enforcement training, it's, more of a safety training, yeah, for administrative, staff and so forth. And we will have some police officers there, see what's being taught and, to hopefully answer questions and offer some advice as well. And, it's first thing is the call, obviously, even if you have our numbers, it's quick to know it. We get people dispatched.
Yeah, this
Do
is
you know
training.
how long approximately the sessions will be?
The 4-hour block.
They're 4 hours.
Yeah, they're being sponsored by the Municipal League, and it's a former APD officer that will be doing the training.
28th.
28th
of
June.
And
28th of June.
they're all Zoom, right?
No, we're here in the council chambers.
Oh, we're not going to do Zoom?
No,
Okay.
And it's from 1 to 4, the afternoon?
Do we have to sit here for
1 to
4
5.
hours?
yes, Yeah.
It's sort of tough on my
Yeah.
bottom.
Yeah.
Do we get to move around a little bit?
I don't know, but we did have a staff member ask if we could bring in water guns and do some.
Oh, we're going to bring
live-
in water and food?
Yeah.
A precious commodity.
Why did I not know you were going to say that? Oh, my goodness. Okay. Anything else that any member of the council would like to bring up, discuss, comment on? If that's the case, then the business of the council is over and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, guys. This is a good meeting, even though it's lasted 3 hours.
It's okay.